This episode of the Popture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch, listen to up to 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, or give us something to discuss in our new post-credit scenes at the end of each episode, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopture. Felt good. Feel like we're on quite simultaneous today. All right, hello everybody, and welcome to the Popture podcast. I am AJ.
More like a drunk.
Shut up! Don't tell her.
That's right, you, the female listener.
The single. We have. I can think of at least 3 women off the top of my head who I know listen to the podcast.
And it could be you.
It's probably you if you're
so,
a
yeah,
woman.
AJ is courting you and doesn't want you to know that he drinks.
They're married.
This
is the Popture podcast.
What are we doing this week?
And that's Richard. Have you said your name?
No, I was trying to keep it private. But I guess that's
the idea is like 200 episodes in. You're like, I'll keep it private.
Pulling a Jeremy and not wanting to reveal my true name on pod.
Oh, that's some behind the scenes. Jeremy for a long time didn't want his last name to be on the pod for reasons that are probably more private than his last name being just saying his last name. Anyway. Look, this week, so what we've been doing, you should explain this. No, I'll explain it. I can do it. I can do it.
I'm drinking a lukewarm beer to try and catch up to AJ.
Okay, I'm on my second cider of the night, and I've had 2 glasses of wine.
And you're not a big drinker, so that's quite a significant amount for you.
So, we for the past, how long has it been? 6 weeks? Would you say?
I don't know what the time frame
since we've been doing James Bond.
Right, okay, yeah, something like that.
About 6 weeks. So we've been doing James Bond for a while, the James Bond series on Film Franchise Fortnights, and because we usually let Patreon members suggest the next franchise we do, they weren't able to do that because we were doing James Bond. And so we thought we would give them the opportunity to suggest topics for off-week episodes. Which is the episodes we do in between Film Franchise Fortnights. And I mean this with no malice whatsoever, but we quickly learned that a lot of the suggested ideas for off weeks, they're not bad ideas, but they were ideas that we didn't feel would cover an entire podcast.
Yeah, some of them can be answered in a sentence.
Which is fine. It's not their job to come up with topics for episode. It's
and some of these, I'm sure we could have extrapolated into a full podcast. I mean, we just, for our patrons, we just recorded a half-hour episode about 2 4-minute shorts.
Yeah.
And it's gold.
Yeah.
Every second of it.
So we thought it'd be potentially better and somewhat funnier to kind of make this episode maybe like a hybrid of our old Q&A episodes, or it's sort of like a sequel to the podcast we did last year when there was heaps of news in 1 week, and we did that podcast that was like podcast ideas made out of the news of the week. Yeah. So what we're going to do is we've selected not all but a lot of the questions that were posed, or topics that were posed from the last few weeks, and we're basically going to go through these ideas that people suggested for podcast episodes and sort of demonstrate why they can't be a full podcast episode by answering them all very quickly. But before we get to that, that's why I'm a little bit drunk tonight, is because I thought maybe this episode needs a bit of spice.
Because you thought our patrons don't deserve respect.
Yeah. Before we get into it, though, I do want to say, Richard, we've had some updates on some things we said last week. We've been very unclear about what the difference is between coronavirus and COVID-19.
Yeah.
Do you want to? We sort of have we've never had more of a response. Like, so many people came out of the woodwork to correct us on this that I feel like we need to mention it now. or forever
Well,
be...
I think we had it right last week that
Mm.
coronavirus causes a disease called COVID-19.
But COVID-19 is coronavirus disease 2019.
Yeah, but the current strain of coronavirus going around is SARS-2. It's literally called SARS-2.
The DNC announces SARS-2.
Yeah, so secure.
What if SARS-2 gets delayed
acute
because of
respiratory
coronavirus?
syndrome 2.
That's a real
it's like
good joke.
SARS-2 con V, I think it is.
talked
And
over
that
it.
if you get that, it causes COVID-19, which is a disease.
Did you like my joke?
I didn't hear it. I was too busy talking myself because I'm so wasted.
I said, what if SARS-2 gets pushed back because of coronavirus?
Very nice.
Very good. So yeah, that's one thing I wanted to mention before we get into the episode. The other thing is go check out the podcast Kaiju Weekly, which I did a guest spot on talking about the Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. And also, I've made a video that's out on YouTube this week. It's if I do say so myself, one of the best videos we've ever made for the channel. It's all about American Pie and the past and future of teen sex comedies. I'm very proud of it, and I want to get as many people watching it as possible. So please watch it and
I
share
helped.
it with your pals. Richard helped.
I play devil's advocate when AJ sends me scripts for his video essays. I go, you've made a tiny factual error here, and because that's all people are going to comment on.
It's genuinely useful. You're right. Yeah. I could not do these things without Richard. He may not appear on screen, but he is invaluable to my process of writing these video essays. All right. So for the last 6 weeks, our patrons have been giving us ideas for episodes. As we said, none of these ideas really fit the.
Well, some of them do. They just,
Yeah. All right. So let's just go. What's our first question?
Okay. So Vincent Lara suggested we do a podcast on movies that were just shy of being good or great, whether that be wrong leads, wrong director, wrong writer, or too much studio interference to keep it from reaching its potential.
Right. I've very short answers for this question. Yeah. So there's two that come to mind. One is The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride.
Interesting, yeah.
Which I feel, had they given 3 more months to the writing process, would have justified a theatrical release.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
and
it's
with
the
the
best...
budget of the
yeah, of course.
The animation.
It's the best straight to DVD Disney sequel, I think.
Okay.
And it's so close to being not necessarily as good as the first one, but as on this operating on the same level as the first one. So that's I feel like The Lion King 2 is real good, but not great. Or not, it's just shy of being good or great.
Well, I've got because I like Vincent, this is a great question, and I really struggle because it's one of those ones that I know there are perfect answers out there, and maybe that's why I didn't really want to do it as like a whole week, because it's like I know there's going to be things that slip my mind, and then for years I'm going to be like, oh, I should have mentioned this on the podcast. But for a very recent example, something like I think The Rise of Skywalker is an interesting one to look at, because it's not, in terms of quality, it's not on anywhere near the cusp of being great. It's terrible. I hate it. But like, there's decisions that could have been made early on that like you pivot not even 90 degrees. You pivot a couple of degrees from the course they went on, and you could have ended up with a great movie.
Yeah, I agree. Another example I had for this is something I've mentioned a few times on different podcasts, which is a little movie called World's Greatest Dad, which is a movie that fascinates me, but I don't feel right saying it's a particularly good movie. Like, I think it's got a really good premise, but it's just kind of sloppily made overall. Yeah, what would you agree? Is that a good example of a?
I think that's a good example. Yeah. Yeah, there's a movie I mentioned on one of the Patreon suggested things when I listed all the movies I saw last year. The movie Gifted with Chris Evans. It's like there's nothing wrong with this, but I don't know why it's not the greatest movie ever made. It's just like everything's good, but nothing's great.
Yeah.
And so I think
Nice.
that's probably why it's just shy of being great, is that it's just missing the X factor, really. I mean, it's the perfect example of a competent film missing an X factor.
Mm. All right, so our next question, our next suggested topic came from David Draper on Patreon. He says, movies that, this is what he wanted us to do a podcast on, movies that are smarter than they're given credit for. I'm thinking The Last Action Hero as well before its time in terms of the meta aspects of action movies, and Demolition Man has a lot going on that I think needs to be discussed. So I would say Starship Troopers is kind of the classic example
Starship Troopers
of this.
is the go-to example of this.
Yeah.
And especially maybe even Jarhead, because they're two famous movies that the sequels
Didn't get it.
like they're not in on the joke. They just see, oh, it's a war movie, or they see like, oh yeah, it's about fucking like Starship Troopers, but not getting the fact that it's like lampooning these ideas.
Yeah. A more recent, well, actually not a more recent example, but what is more recent than Starship Troopers, actually. But it's in the world of TV. There's a show that might not actually be that ubiquitous with our outside of Australia and New Zealand listeners, but there's an Australian mockumentary series from like 2007 called Summer Heights High.
Oh yeah.
Which you know what that is. It's a comedian named Chris Lilly who dresses up as a bunch of different characters, and it's about like the inner workings of this high school, and he plays a different character and it follows them. I think that show, like, it was so popular, deservedly so, but it was popular because it was funny and not popular because it was like a masterclass in character acting, which I think it is as well. Like, Chris Lilly has such a way to his performing that it's so good. And what's shocking about Summer Heights High is it's actually quite poignant in places. But when people quote Summer Heights High, they're quoting like the dick jokes and the silly moments. But it's actually quite
it's like your Little Britain kind of catchphrase comedy. And that's I think what people see it as, and that's by the time I watched it like a year after it was out, kind of thing, and I watched it and I was like, this show isn't very funny, but it was because literally every single joke in the series had been repeated ad nauseum, that or every single joke in the show I'd heard already and I was sick of.
Right. But it's actually quite, I feel like it actually has, it's got a lot of commentary on the school system and underprivileged students and really important stuff that it takes very seriously. However, he's made a few shows since then with the same concept of him playing multiple characters, and there just ends up to being like a very much a lack of thought gone into it. Yeah. His latest show called Lunatics, which is on Netflix, is not very good, and it makes me think that maybe Summer Heights High was somewhat of a fluke. He has some good shows though. You should check him out if you've never heard of him. Summer Heights High is his best one, but there's the one before it was called We Can Be Heroes. That's really funny too. And Jemay Private Schoolgirl, I think, was his most recent good
he
show.
did Jonah from Tonga as well.
Jonah from Tonga is not very good though.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
He also did Angry Boys, but I don't know. I'm conflicted on Angry Boys. Do you have an answer for this? Movies that are smarter than they're given credit for?
Well, so one example that I hear thrown around a lot, like Starship Troopers, is Spring Breakers. I've never seen it, but
no,
it's Harmony Korine, I know, tends to divide people because some people see it as surface level, and then some people will be like, "Oh, he's such a genius," and I think it's somewhere in between.
Yeah.
But my go-to example of this is kind of becoming recognized now for how brilliant and intelligent it is, but Josie and the Pussycats. When that came out, it was our first generic movie podcast on our Patreon, which if you pledge $10 to our Patreon, you get an extra podcast every month.
Patreon.com/cultpopture, get on it.
Yeah. So Josie and the Pussycats is like lampooning the idea of product placement and the music industry and how it's all commercial and stuff like that. But like every single shot in the film is laden with so much product placement. And at the time, people were like, "This is hypocritical." But it's a satire. They're making fun of it. It's
so very clearly a satire as well. I'm so shocked by that response to it when it's like, how did this many people not get the joke?
Yeah, people get the joke now, and I think it's become a little bit of a cult classic. But it's such a good movie, man. I love that movie. And the music's fantastic. Yeah.
All right, what's our next one?
All right, our next one is from Ben Close, sorry, who wants us to cover the most influential memes of the century.
Did you write anything for this?
No, I thought this was more your territory.
I thought you would think that too, so I gave I've written a little paragraph. Well, my first issue with this topic is century feels a bit, like, why would it be century? Like, memes have probably existed for less than a century, especially internet memes, which have only existed for 20 years or so.
Yeah, well, the word meme is only roughly a century old, isn't it?
No, it'd be like the 80s, I think a meme was coined. So I pretty much was like, why century? And I think if we change it to like the past decade, I do have an answer.
1976.
Right, there you go. So the most influential memes of the decade, I would say, are Dat Boy, the frog. Oh shit, here he comes. Here comes Dat Boy. Is that the whole meme?
Yeah.
There's a frog on a unicycle. Oh shit, what up was the next part. Yeah. So I feel like that meme bridged the gap between normie memes and dank memes. It was funny to both sides. Like, it's just a funny picture, but it's also like, esoteric enough to be like, I get it because I'm weird, not because I just think it's a funny picture. So I think Dat Boy kind of has outlasted as being one of the most, very much of like an icon of the memes of the 2010s. I think Covfefe, Donald Trump's tweet, is one of the most iconic just because it's insane that it happened. Like, this has been a half decade ruled by a man who, I've never seen a person in control so clearly not know what they're doing on such a global scale than Donald Trump. What an understatement. What a hot take that I'm delivering right now. And I think him tweeting a spelling mistake that stops halfway through a sentence is like a sign of the times. Do you know what I mean? Like, Jesus Christ. The president just tweeted, what was the full tweet? It was like,
despite the negative press, Covfefe.
What world are we living in? What dark timeline are we living in? So I think that became a symbol as well. But I think maybe the most influential meme of the century is label memes, which is just a picture with words, so there'll be a knight facing off against a giant monster, and the knight will be labeled the teacher, and the monster will be labeled the autoplay function on YouTube. So it's like that's such a diverse template that it's everywhere now, and label memes are kind of just synonymous with the word meme. Like, you don't go, did you see that label meme? You go, did you see that meme? In the same way that advice animals were synonymous with the word meme in the late 2000s. So like awkward penguin and socially awesome penguin and confession bear. You would just call that a meme. You wouldn't call it an advice animal, which is what your meme called it.
Yeah. I don't know about what was the exact wording, influential memes of the century, but possibly if we're talking of the century, not of the 21st century, but of the last century, the S.
The S, yeah, Superman. They called it Superman S.
Stop. Yeah, I cannot stand when people call it a Superman S.
I know,
because
I don't think
it's so easily verifiable, like disprovable that it's not the Superman S.
Yeah.
And I had arguments in like primary school with people that go, "Oh, it's Superman S." I go, "That's not what it looks like," and they're like, "No, it is," and you have no way to prove it at the time because this is before smartphones, before you could just pull up a picture of Superman. But yeah, it's the Wikipedia page for it is called Cool S. So it's just known as the Cool S.
It is a cool S, Richard. It is.
If you like,
look, no one's disputing that it's a cool S.
I wonder, like. I'm not going to describe it any further, but comment if you don't know what I'm talking about. If I talk about the cool S that everyone drew, like no one knows where it came from or like how it came about, but everyone and like our parents' generation maybe not our parents, people slightly younger than us as parents generation, like drew this in high school, in primary school. That like it dates like at least the 80s, if not further.
Yeah. And then on that subject, you've also got something like Kilroy Was Here, which was
Kilroy Was Here.
A meme from World War II, I think, which was how would you describe it? As a little man peeking over a fence, like a drawing of a little man with a big nose.
Yeah, it's like it's like you draw a straight line and then his nose is kind of dangling over and his hands are just a little perched on the
and
it was looking over.
It was sort of a way of saying, "Hey, I'm here," to other soldiers in World War II because they'd draw graffiti it everywhere so that you would see it and be like, "Oh, Kilroy was here."
Yeah, and So the Cool ES is just an amazing thing for how something went global before the internet, like that everyone just all over the world knew how to draw this Cool ES.
Yeah. Nice. Well, our next question, Richard, comes from Jeremy, who simply says, do your all-time Disney top 5, and perhaps, if you have more time, your top 5 Pixar.
He said Disney top 10.
What did I say?
Top 5.
Well, top 10 Disney animated.
Top 5.
Top Pixar. 5 Pixar. So, how do we want to do this? Shall I go first and then you go?
You go first.
All right, so my top 10 Disney, starting from 10. Beauty and the Beast is 10. 9 is The Hunchback of Notre Dame. 8 is Wreck-It Ralph. 7 is Ralph Breaks the Internet. 6 is Moana. 5 is Lilo and Stitch. 4 is The Nightmare Before Christmas. 3 is Hercules, which is a nostalgic pick, and I acknowledge that in terms of quality, it's probably lesser than a lot of these other movies. 2 is The Lion King, and 1 is Aladdin.
Nice.
I feel... it wasn't until I did this list where I realized I didn't really have a Disney top 10, and I really like Aladdin, The Lion King, and Hercules, and everything else I'm convinced either way on.
When we were messaging each other earlier today, you said, "Oh man, I so half-assed this," and I said, "I doubt you half-assed it more than I did."
Okay,
I completely half-assed this. So starting at number 5, because that's as far as I went, Wreck-It Ralph. Number 4, Lilo and Stitch. Number 3, Emperor's New Groove.
That's like my 11. I couldn't in good conscience put it in front of Beauty and the Beast, but I do like it.
And number 2 is The Lion King. Number 1 is Aladdin. So we've got the same top 2.
Oh, that's cool. That's very cute. We've never really discussed that as a couple of friends.
I thought we would both pick Aladdin. But yeah, I mean, fucking... 6 onwards, just pick it in order. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
The rest of them are as good as each other. Like there's the Renaissance tier of Little Mermaid, Pocahontas, Tarzan, Beauty and the Beast. To me, they all just
What's your Pixar top 5?
Okay, I cheated a little bit. But my number 5 is The Incredibles.
Mm-hmm.
Number 4 is Inside Out.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3 is Finding Nemo. Number 2 is Monsters, Inc. And number 1 is the Toy Story trilogy.
Not the quadrilogy.
Notice I said trilogy, not quadrilogy as well.
Why is that?
Because I only counted the first 3 films.
You don't like the
Toy Story 1, 2, and 3 are
Since
tied.
when did you not like the 4th Toy Story?
It doesn't tie for number 1.
I like it more than... I think it's my second favourite Toy Story.
After
2, which is my number 5 pick. My number 4 pick is Finding Nemo. My number 3 pick is WALL-E. My number 2 pick is The Incredibles. And my number 1 pick is actually Inside Out. Like, and that warms my heart.
Wait, so you like Toy Story 4 more than your number 5, but it doesn't appear in the top 4?
No.
No, wait. Never mind.
What? I'm the drunk one. What are you talking about?
No, never mind.
Cut that out, AJ. Cut that out. I love that Inside Out's my favourite Pixar film. It just inspires me that...
Because, like, the main character's a girl, and, like, I'm so woke and feminist.
What the hell are you talking? No, just that, like, a one of their later films can actually just be straight up be my favourite film of theirs. Inspires me, especially after everyone was saying that they were going to go downhill. I think that's cool.
What are their worst films?
Well, their worst films are just the Cars trilogy. Like, I don't even hate Cars that much. Like Cars 1
I
and
really
3.
like Cars 1 and 3.
Yeah.
Their worst films for me, like Cars 2 is like, whatever, who cares? It's obviously the worst one. Good Dinosaur, what What was the other one I was going to say?
Finding
Dory. Finding Dory is... I can't believe the world thought Finding Dory was good.
I don't think the Good Dinosaur's that bad. I wouldn't say I dislike The Good Dinosaur.
Yeah.
Next question, next suggested topic. Brianna McZant says, best modern-day adaptation of a classic story. Her examples she lists are like Hamlet and The Lion King, Emma and Clueless, Taming of the Shrew and 10 Things I Hate About You, She's the Man and Twelfth Night, etc. My answer for this is I don't know.
Okay.
That's all I wrote was I don't know.
Okay, don't worry, mate. I've got us covered. Okay, here are my favourites. Bridget Jones's Diary, which is a modern retelling of Pride and Prejudice.
Mm-hmm. Do you like that movie?
Huh?
Do you like that movie?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
First Bridget Jones's Diary is great.
Okay.
So like they're not all like fucking Shakespearean, but they're all pre 19th 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Apocalypse Now, a modern retelling of Heart of Darkness, which is a novel from the 1800s, which got updated to be told in the Vietnam War, and then was updated again in Ad Astra.
Drunk confession. I've never seen Apocalypse Now.
Interesting, because you called it a 10 out of 10, not like only last week.
I know, dude. I thought about it as I said. I thought I'm lying. I'm hiding the truth.
Yeah, it's good. It is good. The don't watch the. I haven't seen the final cut that they released last year, but the Redux is a good example of a pretentious director's cut where they're allowed to just chuck everything in. 2020's The Invisible Man. I really enjoyed that. Which is obviously H.G. Wells' The Invisible Man. The Emperor's New Groove, Emperor's New Clothes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, kind of. More just the title than anything else. Freaky Friday, the Lindsay Lohan, Jamie Lee Curtis film. And I'm not meaning that that's a remake of the older film. It's actually based on a novel called Vice Versa, which came out in the 1800s, which was a father and son.
Vice Versa?
Muppets Christmas Carol.
Vice Versa is a very good name for that story.
Muppets Christmas Carol.
Muppets Christmas Carol is great.
And finally, the first 2 seasons of Sherlock.
Right.
The TV show. Because after that, it got real bad.
But The Dark Knight Rises is A Tale of Two Cities.
Yeah. That was another one I was going to say.
Cool. All right. Jeremy and Vincent both asked very similar questions. I shouldn't say asked a question. They suggested these as topics. So Jeremy suggested the movies that awakened you. He says we often talk about how, that movie was my sexual awakening, which we do often talk about on this podcast. But which movies awakened your appreciation for film, for art, for music, for certain causes, etc., etc. Feel free to delete this if you don't feel like a film has awakened you that much. And Vincent asked, I would like to hear you guys talk about movies that awoke your love for the art form. That moment you went from enjoying movies to realizing it's an art that can speak to you in a certain way or make you something at a certain point in your life.
Do you want to go first?
Okay, so I have a few of these. One big, the movie that made me want to pursue film was The Dark Knight when I saw it when I was 15.
And you were like, oh my God, I'm literally the Joker.
I just loved that movie so much, and me and my friends loved it so much, and we sort of started making movies as a hobby, which is, translated into sort of what I do now. I have a very vulnerable answer for Jeremy's question for what made you awaken to a certain cause. I don't know if I want to say it, Richard.
Say it and I'll make fun of you.
Will you tell me if I'm just being too drunk and it's like you shouldn't release this?
Okay.
Actually, no, I can't. It's a spoiler for something you haven't seen yet.
Really?
It's a spoiler for The Last of Us Left Behind, the expansion game.
I'm pretty aware of what happens in it.
Okay, so spoilers for Left Behind, which is the DLC for The Last of Us game. I'm going to get way too vulnerable. I'm too drunk for this. I'll try to be vague as possible. Okay, so I was raised a Christian. I was raised in church circles. I'm not a Christian anymore. And I've never really talked about it much on the podcast. I'm probably going to cut this out of the edit. I feel like this is too vulnerable. But around the time maybe a bit before the Left Behind DLC came out, my brother came out as gay to our very Christian family, and they, my family haven't disowned him or anything, but it was certainly a contentious issue. Around the same time, a teenager that I was mentoring came out to me as well as gay,
And you were like, "Is it my fault?"
And then I played The Last of Us Left Behind. Actually, no. First, I asked out a lesbian, and I knew she was a lesbian. I did that. I shouldn't be saying this on the podcast. But then I played The Last of Us Left Behind, where it's revealed that Ellie, the one of the main characters, is into girls, and it just really
turned you on.
No, it didn't turn me. Shut up! Don't pervert my vulnerable experience. I want to say something. I even though I've had some weird beliefs when I was younger, they never translated into especially malicious acts. Like I never attacked anyone for being gay or anything.
Yeah, and you're super woke and feminist now. So
I'm super woke and feminist now, but at the time, if you'd asked me what I thought of gay people, I probably would have skirted the question. And tried to turn it into a broader subject about, it doesn't matter. It's just about loving God. But I was so impacted.
I feel like you never truly believed it. You were always you would skirt the question because you knew that the beliefs were wrong.
Thank you. That's a good way to put it. And so, but the all these things happening in my life, and then, the thing with The Last of Us, which was a game I just cherished, and finding this about this thing about her character in the expansion pack, I was so moved by it. And I've been wanting to talk about this recently, but I didn't know if there was any right place to do it. And maybe a podcast that 40 people listen to is going to be the place to do this. But I genuinely feel that character reveal in Left Behind is one of the big turning points in my life where I was able to see homosexuality as a beautiful thing and not as a sinful thing, which as I slowly but surely left the church over the next couple of years, just became obvious that it can be a beautiful thing. But until then, I would feel uncomfortable around any queer cinema or anything. And now, I can watch Brokeback Mountain or Call Me By Your Name and be like, these are fucking beautiful love stories or tragic love stories, and actually probably both their cases. They can be they're somewhat tragic love stories. But it was The Last of Us Left Behind, man, that really awakened my appreciation for a certain cause. Is that okay? Nice. Is that a good story?
It probably cut that out. No, that was very beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know. I feel like my answers are dumb now. That the film that I remember liking, being I'm a film boy, was the first time I saw Back to the Future.
Cool.
That was the first time I think I liked a film on more than just a little kid level of I want to watch it again. It was wow, this is really clever and this is really well made.
Right.
And then I remember Hot Fuzz. I remember seeing that. That felt like it changed my world. That it was oh my god, there isn't a second, a frame or a syllable that's wasted in this entire film.
I agree.
And that's what I still think Hot Fuzz is one of the fucking tightest movies I've ever seen.
It's perfect. It's a perfect film, isn't it?
After the halfway point, every single line of dialogue is a callback, and it's and nothing's wasted. It's and that was when that probably awoke my love of cinema, and really. Whiplash is another one. I mean, this was obviously much later in life, but that was feel like it really awoke something in me. But yeah, other than that, growing up, yeah, I don't know. Those are the ones I remember are Back to the Future and Hot Fuzz.
So Michael suggested we do a podcast on best villain / antagonist. My answer to this question was I just listed a bunch of villains that I like Have you done
yeah.
anything more in depth than that?
I just listed what potentially my favorite villain in pop culture.
Who's that?
Um, Kilgrave, the Purple Man from season 1 of Jessica Jones.
Really? What's good about
Played by David
Kilgrave?
Tennant. Fuck, he's so good. It's such a fucking good and apparently Fisk is better in Daredevil, but I only watched the first 4 or 5 episodes of Daredevil, and you don't even meet Fisk until quite a few episodes into it. But his whole gimmick is that it's played by David Tennant, so he's a charming Englishman, and he's doing the same voice he did for Doctor Who. So for a lot of people, it was oh my god. But his power is that he people have to do whatever he says, kind of thing. And so it's essentially a form of brainwashing. And so the main character was kept prisoner by him for months, just by having to obey every single command of his. And it's it's similar to the Invisible Man. It's kind of a social commentary on rape survivors and things like that. And it's such a good skin crawly performance, and the concept of the character is really cool as well. That it's all about, this is such a cool power, and of course he's going to use it for evil because this would corrupt someone.
Cool. Very cool. Okay, I'll just read out my list, and you stop me when you want to talk about one of them. How's that sound?
Yeah.
All right, the Joker from The Dark Knight.
Okay, stop.
Bane.
No, don't.
Bane from The Dark Knight Rises. Thanos from the MCU. Killmonger from Black Panther. Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men.
Yeah, he's one I thought about.
Yeah. Lorne Malvo and V.M. Varga from Fargo season 1 and season 3.
Man.
I think I like V.M. Varga more than Lorne Malvo. I love David Thewlis as the character. Every line he says is so rich, and I think what's good about that character is he's fun to listen to because his accent's so crazy, and he's got he says the most insanely evil things, and it's just. It's so. I rewatched season 3 recently. He has a great line in it, that's sort of his famous line from the show, which is, "The problem is not that there is evil in the world; it's that there is good. If everyone was evil, no one would care." Which is such a pure villainous ideal, right? Because it's so it's so throwing any kind of humanity away. There's a part in it where he's trying to cheer up the one of the main characters, Ewan McGregor's character, and he does the Crooked Man poem. He just recites it, but in his voice, it's just it's so horrible. He's just there was a crooked man who walked a crooked mile. He found a crooked cat. It's so he's so gross, and I love that. I would say any villain in Breaking Bad is probably a pretty good play for some of the coolest villains and antagonists. Kylo Ren, I think, is a real cool. If the Star Wars sequels got anything right, that kind of, if they've got one thing that's in the Hall of Fame of Star Wars, I feel like the main villain is such a well-rounded and cool character, mainly due to Adam Driver, but. Still, Syndrome from The Incredibles, I think, is probably Pixar's best villain. Not that Pixar have that big of a slate of villains, because I watched a video by Nerdstalgic that talked about how Pixar villains are always real ancillary to the story, because the villain is actually the internal struggle of the protagonists a lot of the time. Randall is an obstacle in Monsters Inc., but it's actually about becoming a better person or monster, it's actually he's more an obstacle than the driving force for a lot of the villains. But that being said, I think Syndrome is a very cool idea for a villain in a superhero movie, that he's a jilted fan turned villain because he wants to become a superhero. Scar, Hades are probably my favorite Disney Renaissance villains.
Hades is the best fucking Disney villain. He doesn't have a song.
Yeah, I wish he had a song, eh? That'd be so
although Scar's song is probably my favorite Disney song.
I agree.
Be prepared.
Gollum, I think, is a very complex character. Joffrey and Ramsay from Game of Thrones were so kind of delicious evilness that you really want in certain villains. It's like the opposite appeal of a sympathetic villain. It's like with Thanos or Killmonger, it's like I kind of get you. I kind of understand why you believe. I may not agree, but I completely understand your motivation. With Joffrey and Ramsay, like Joffrey is scary because he's a 13-year-old. You know what I mean? He's a monkey with a machine gun, and that's what's scary about him. And when Joffrey,
he's a monkey with a typewriter.
He
could write anything.
When Joffrey leaves the show, you're like, well, there goes the big bad of the series. But Ramsay almost immediately replaces him. And Ramsay is like worse because he's not a monkey with a machine gun. He's a snake. He's a calculated like evil who's just as cruel as Joffrey. And so they did a really good job, I think, of one-upping what seemed like an insurmountable villain. When Joffrey left and Ramsay came in. Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah, she's great.
I looked up female villains because I wanted to be equal.
Because you wanted to be woke and feminist.
Yeah, and I think Nurse Ratched is a great example because you could easily watch that film and not even register that she's the villain. It's only really when you think about it that you're like, oh my god, she's pure evil. Yeah. Which is, the most prestigious entry on this list of villains. Well, and on Shigur.
Have you seen there's like a famous photo of her, I think it was in Playboy, of her like topless on the set of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest because she hated playing that character so much and the fact that, she played it so well that everyone on the set resented her. And so she was like, I just need to do something free and wild and me. And so she ripped her top off. And wow. I think it was used in Playboy or something like that, but it's quite a famous photo of her.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Dolores Umbridge from Harry Potter, I think, is
yes.
another deliciously evil villain. Just because she is kind of the archetype of a boomer now, almost that archetype you have on your head when you're frustrated at the older generations not being responsible and not helping you out and not taking you seriously. That's just Dolores Umbridge,
Yeah, well, and also the thing is that everyone knows someone had a teacher that was some degree of that.
Yeah.
And it's she obviously takes it to the extreme, and so that makes it really
it's personal.
There's something so personal and repressed about your hatred for her. And there's a similar character to that in Fleabag, the TV series. Olivia Colman's character is is Fleabag's godmother, and she's so it's a similar kind of thing of someone could watch that and not understand why you don't like her because she never does anything wrong. Well, she does later on, but when you first meet her, it's oh, she's just a lovely woman, but you just fucking hate her, and it's so hard to describe why. But it's and I know people like that in real life that when I've said something about them rubs me the wrong way, and they go, but they're the loveliest person, and you go, no, but that's so fake. Yeah,
they're a climate change denier, or something. There's something.
Yeah, not even that. It's just
they're a Voldemort denier.
Yeah.
And the last one I had written down was Biff Tannen for no deep reason. He's just a fun performance.
Yeah, for sure. Since when did you become the physical type? That's Griff.
Who's the best villain out of Biff, Griff, and Mad Dog?
Oh, part of me wants to say Mad Dog, even though it's not him.
It's got to be Biff. He's just in it more. He's the ringleader. He's the Yeah. But this is from Back to the Future. If you don't know what we're talking
you can
about.
tell he's having a lot of fun with Griff and Mad Dog, though.
Yeah, that's true. What's our next Patreon suggestion for an episode?
Okay, what franchise, movie to movie, changes the genre/tone the most, and which does it best?
So this is from Luke. I wrote Evil Dead is the one that's
Army
the
of
Darkness syndrome is kind of a thing, where it's dramatic change in tone from sequel to sequel.
Yeah, which is also a modern retelling of a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court.
Yeah. I also wrote Pierce Brosnan's Bond films. Last week. You can go from GoldenEye to Die Another Day in 4 movies. And Gremlins, I know it's only 2 movies, but the degree to which Gremlins 2 is different from Gremlins 1 is just astonishing.
Remember when we did Gremlins on the podcast and I like seemingly didn't notice the change in tone?
Luke also says, "Fuck it. How about what tragedy would you try prevent if you were a time traveling dog? How would that ripple out into present day? And what would you wish you could do if you weren't a dog?" This was because there's a thing on Twitter about a children's book series about a time traveling dog who goes back to like 9/11 and the Titanic. So he was talking about that.
I didn't realize that was a reference.
If you were a time-traveling dog, like, see, answer me this, like, you can set the parameters for this. Have I been a human? Do I retain all the memories I have
think
now?
that's the thing, is that you have to, like, because if you're a dog, it's like, well, you're not going to do anything, you know? You're not capable of recognizing these things. However, if because I think it's a more interesting thing, say you traveled back in time and your brain was put into a dog's body. How would you, so you can't speak, how would you stop tragedies?
So I probably would quite selfishly just try to go back and try prevent every bad thing that's ever happened to me. Like I'd go back and stop myself from, asking out that girl or try to get a job that I ended up hating. Like I'd probably do that.
I'd go back in time and be my own pet because I never had a pet. And then I could have, growing up would have been different. I would have had a friend. No, I think I grew up pretty well adjusted for never having had a pet. But it would be help with the ladies having a cute little dog.
My mind immediately went to a scene in the movie of that story where you as a dog are sleeping in the corner of the room where younger you as a human is like masturbating, and just how you would feel about that as a dog.
Yeah.
That's the scene I immediately...
It's a weird movie. But
it's not a good movie. It's a bad movie.
So I've always thought that like with preventing tragedies and things like that, I think
the responsibility's too great. I've always thought that if I could go back in time, I just wouldn't put that onus on me.
Yeah, I mean, something like 9/11, for instance, or the like a lot of these things. It's like I feel like the incident. It's important to history that it still happened, but I would try and minimize the death toll.
Yeah, like 9/11.
Like imagine calling in a bomb threat calling in a bomb threat to the World Trade Center an hour before the plane hit. So there's no one in the buildings, but then all the developments we've had. I mean, I get like there's like a war and stuff like that, which is obviously not good. But I don't know. I do wonder how different the world would be. I think it would be easier to. I also think it would be easier to evacuate the building than it would be to stop the plane.
Right. Yeah. That's such a funny thing to say, like so casually. Like, I do sometimes wonder what the world would be like if 9/11 didn't happen. Like everyone wonders that, but like it's a podcast topic. Kate says, "I'd love to hear you guys talk about what you think are the great New Zealand films or quintessential New Zealand films and why." So I'm presuming she's meaning Kate is a New Zealander as well. She's a friend of ours. I'm presuming she's meaning outside of your PJs and your Taikas. Like if it's not directed by Taika or Peter Jackson, what are some New Zealand films you would recommend?
Yeah. Me. There's The Quiet Earth, which is like one of our very like the few forays into like genre films.
Yeah. I'd recommend The Quiet Earth, and I'd recommend In My Father's Den. Both are very fascinating movies. I don't know if I'd say I like either of them. Not in the same way I like a movie that has like a compelling story and stuff. I like them in the sense that there's just strange, enigmatic kind of pieces. In My Father's Den is fucking brutal. Have you seen it?
No.
It is. That movie leaves you feeling hollow. So it's very interesting. I'd recommend that one if you are listening to this and wanting to see some classic Kiwi cinema.
quintessential. There's things like Once Were Warriors, Goodbye Pork. So Once Were Warriors is like this harrowing tale about domestic abuse.
Lee
Goodbye Pork
Tamahori
Pie.
directed it, of Die
Yeah.
Another Day.
Goodbye Pork Pie is like a road movie.
Mhm.
Then Utu is like a Maori western, directed by a white
I
man.
need to watch that. I've got it on DVD. I haven't watched it yet.
Sione's Wedding.
Do you think that's good?
I mean, it's fine. It feels like there's a certain type of a certain part of New Zealand that it, you know.
Yeah. That's true.
There was a series called The Lord of the Rings, which is quite popular.
Richard. All right.
And then I mean, we said apart from your PJs and your Tigers, but like Hunt for the Wilder People and like Brain Dead, those, and Bad Taste, like the early PJ film, Peter Jackson.
Brain Dead is Peter Jackson. I think it's the second film. Brain Dead is legitimately one of the only like B movies I've seen, like intentional B movies, like it's like a splatter film that's actually incredibly compelling and a wonderful story. Like Brain Dead's just a good movie, despite it also being fun. You know, I really like Brain Dead. It's called Dead Alive in America, I think.
That's right, yeah.
Ben Close suggested this for a topic. What movie characters would have the best podcast? So if you break down what he's wanting to get, it's which movie characters would have the best dynamic in a... So I started thinking of great character dynamics. I thought of Nicholas Angel and Danny Butterman from Hot Fuzz. That'd be a fun podcast. And the other one I wrote was Mulder and Scully from The X-Files. That'd be an interesting podcast of like Mulder and Scully going through old cases.
Yeah. I mean, I guess because you talk about like, they'd have some of the most interesting shit to talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these dynamics, I guess you'd find on TV more than movies as well.
Yeah.
Like Troy and Arbed from Community.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know, I'm surprised there isn't an episode where they start a podcast because like, yeah, who else? I'm trying to think. I thought about this one. I was trying to think of movie characters. I mean, there's plenty that's like, just think of the movie characters. They have the most interesting lives.
Yeah. Ben from Lost. Ben and Hurley. Ben and Hurley doing a podcast together. That'd be cool.
Yeah. So there you go. Christopher Brown asked the most delicious looking in-film meal. I mean, there's a whole YouTube channel, Binging with Babish, if you want this answered.
Yeah.
I would say the best like food movie is Chef. That movie just makes you hungry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's a boring answer, but when they pull out that fucking brisket, oh my god.
So good. We made brisket the other night. It was real good.
Wow.
Yeah, what you do is you get a little dinner roll, you pop some brisket and some coleslaw in there, you pour some hot sauce on a plate, you just dip the whole thing in the puddle on your plate. Just eat that. It's, oh my god, it's like my favorite food. It's so delicious. Brent asked, AJ reviews the movies that Richard reviewed in the last episode, whether he's seen them or not. I wrote ha ha to my note for this one because otherwise we'd be here for a long.
Do you want me to give you like 3 movies I'll pick at random and you have to tell me, you have to review them?
Okay,
let me just find my list. Okay, give me a number.
14.
Okay, what do you think of The Last Laugh?
It's racist. It's straight up racist.
Next one? Next number?
Yeah. 72.
Oh, let's go above 100. Come on.
Okay, 172.
What did you think of the Angry Birds movie?
I think it's probably going to go down as one of the most important films in cinema.
Nice, yeah. I probably agree. And your last number?
351.
It goes to 270.
Oh, shit. 251.
Dracula versus Frankenstein.
It's a hot movie, Richard. It's a sexy movie. Like I don't want to be revealing too much about my personal taste, but you know, I won't lie. It's a sexy movie.
Yeah, sweet, cool.
There
That's
you go.
that.
All right. Christopher Brown says top 10 non-Bond theme songs. You said you'd take care of this one, so give us your top 10 movie theme songs that aren't from James Bond.
Okay, so here's my criteria. The film can't be a musical. I have included some that are like films about music, but they're not strictly musicals. But some of them, I'll when we get to them, I'll say, I don't know if this counts, kind of thing. I've got a few honorable mentions. Up Where We Belong by Joe Cocker and Jennifer Warnes from An Officer and a Gentleman. Is a great love theme.
It's up where we belong.
That's the one. I Just Called to Say I Love You by Stevie Wonder, which is from a film called The Woman in Red. That's just a nice song.
Okay.
I Believe I Can Fly by R. Kelly from Space Jam. It's a good song that's better than the film it's in, however he does lose points for being a pedophile.
Yeah, it's a good song. It's better than the film it's in, and it's better than the artist who sang it.
Yeah, 100%.
I Believe I Can Fly from Space Jam.
Did you not know that?
And is Space Jam's theme song not Come On and Slam?
That's a good argument to make. I mean, I think films can have more than one, as well. Like,
Can
like
they?
James.
I don't know, man.
Okay. Well, no, yeah. So I'm going. My criteria is this for this as well was that like songs that were written for or like released for the film kind of thing. So and also it's the film's kind of a musical, kind of about music, but Purple Rain by Prince from Purple Rain is like one of the greatest songs ever written. So I felt I should give that a shout out. I've actually got, so I've listed 11, and this is in a vague order, but this is definitely. Oh, actually, sorry. Honorable mention to the Spider-Man trilogy as well. Hero by Chad Kroeger, featuring Josie Scott of Saliva, Vindicated by Dashboard Confessional, and Signal Fire by Snow Patrol are all fucking amazing songs, and could have been on this list. So number 11 is I See Fire, Ed Sheeran from The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug.
Yes, Richard.
Number 10, Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now by Starship from Mannequin.
Okay.
Mannequin. Yeah, that's a good song. Men in Black by Will Smith from Men in Black.
It does Nod Your Head make its list from Men in Black 2?
It didn't, but I do love that song. Also, Lose Yourself didn't quite make the list, even though it probably should have.
Lose Yourself didn't make the list. My God, the other ones must be amazing. That's probably one of the most iconic ones there is.
Okay, so here's one that may or may not count because it's from a film. It's not a musical, but it's about music, and this is very clearly like the main song in it. But Falling Slowly by Glenn Hansard and Marketa Rglova from Once. The
that
John
is
Carney
a grey
film.
area.
Yeah. Cut to the Feeling by Carly Rae Jepsen from a film called Ballerina, which is called Leap in the United States. The film's real bad, but man, what a fucking banger that song is. That's another one that's like, that's a bit iffy because I think it was actually written before the movie, but she held it back because it felt cinematic, and so it was released on that and became the theme song to that. Kiss from a Rose by Seal from Batman Forever. That one's just funny because it's like, it is a great song, but how is that from Batman Forever,
Yeah.
So here's I got, in position 5, I've got 2 songs tied. One is King of Wishful Thinking by Go West, and I fucking love this song. This is mine and Jess's song. But I couldn't determine whether or not it was written specifically for Pretty Women or not. But there was another song that was definitely written for it. I Must Have Been Love by Roxette, which I also love. And so if we can't include King of Wishful Thinking, I'm happy to put It Must Have Been Love in its place. All right. Now we're up to the top ones. Do you want to guess what movies they're from? So
I actually would have no idea, to be honest.
Number 4 is by Ray Parker Jr. The song is called Ghostbusters. What do you think the film is?
Is it from Ghostbusters 2?
No, it's from Ghostbusters. Sorry. Thanks for playing.
2016.
I mean, Ghostbusters is what an iconic song. I mean, yeah. And like, and I haven't just counted these on. It's not entirely personal preference. There's a lot of like things that have gone into it that are, counting how iconic they are, or if they had to bend the rules a little bit to include them. But top three, number 2 and 3 are completely interchangeable for me. I'm going to put number 3, "Don't You Forget About Me" by Simple Minds, which is from
The Breakfast Club.
Yes. I love this song. Number 2, "St. Elmo's Fire" by John Parr, which is from
St. Elmo's Fire.
Yeah, it is. That's a great song. That song transcends the movie so much for me.
Where's the song go? I don't know of another song.
It's also it's like St. Elmo's Fire parentheses Man in Motion. Look it up.
Okay.
And number 1, the greatest non-Bond movie theme song of all time is "Eye of the Tiger" by Survivor.
Oh, wow. Interesting choice.
And what's that from?
It's from Rocky 2? Rocky 3?
Rocky 3. "Eye of the Tiger" is such a fucking good song.
I'm not into Eye of the Tiger. It reminds me of the beep test.
Well, I mean, hey, that's your own personal demons. To me, it's just a fucking amazing song that it only exists because they couldn't afford the rights to Another One Bites the Dust, and they were like, "Oh fuck, just find some shitty band, we'll get them to write a song for the movie," and they ended up creating the greatest movie theme of all time.
My favorite movie non-Bond theme songs is from Hugh Grant and
yeah, man.
What's her name? Drew Barrymore. And music and lyrics. There's 2 great songs of that. One's called "Pop Goes My Heart" and one's called "Way Back Into Love." And they are both very good songs for very different reasons. But I love those songs, and I don't actually love that movie. I was about to say, and I love that movie. I don't, but the songs are great.
And I thought you might say that song from that movie you roll like.
Which one?
You know the one.
You're gonna have to tell me.
Adam Levine.
Begin Again.
Yeah, that's not the name of the song.
I don't. Well, what would you say is Begin Again not a musical?
Yeah, that's why I didn't include it. But I know you like
Begin
it.
Again. You would say, the theme song for Begin Again would be "Lost Stars," but I prefer
That's it, Lost Stars.
I prefer "Loved You Like a Fool." That's my favorite song in that movie.
Okay, all right. Let's continue.
Okay, so Brent gave us this topic for a podcast. Replace the best actor or actress in their winning role at the Oscars with someone who lost to them. I went down a fucking rabbit hole on this one.
Oh, nice.
Dude.
I struggle with this one, so I'm happy to hear what you've got.
It's a good subject, but I think I have a very funny answer for it. So shall I just rattle off the answers I had?
Yeah, go for it.
There's a plot twist halfway through. You're going to think you know where it's going, and then you're going to be like, oh, shit. All right. So here's what I've written. Adam Driver as the Joker.
I knew you were going to say that.
Antonio Banderas as the Joker. Jonathan Pryce as the Joker. Leonardo DiCaprio as the Joker. But then Josh Brolin as the Joker. Robert Downey Jr. as the Joker, Philip Seymour Hoffman as the Joker, and Michael Shannon as the Joker. So if you didn't pick up on the joke, two different actors have won an Oscar for playing the Joker. And I looked at who their competing actors were and just was like, what if they played the Joker? And some of these are like legitimately interesting casting choices.
Okay, have you got to the plot twist yet?
That was the plot twist. Was I changed to Heath Ledger halfway through?
Okay. Okay. I thought that's where it was going.
Well,
I thought you were going to say
okay.
As someone other than the Joker, but
Never.
Okay, all right, no, okay.
I
guess we're just so on the same wavelength that you can't trick me.
Yeah, listeners found it funny. You're just too good for it.
Well, our listeners are morons.
Clearly, by the suggestions, they have. I'm kidding. No, I think, okay, so out of these, I legitimately think Adam Driver, Leonardo DiCaprio, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and Michael Shannon would make fascinating Jokers.
Mm. Yeah, that'll be very different. The one I had was that if we're going like ones that actually could have made sense, Daniel Day-Lewis as Winston Churchill.
That's cool. That's really cool.
But yeah, and then I was like, oh, fucking Daniel Kaluuya as Winston Churchill.
Yeah. It's 2020. We can have a black Winston Churchill.
All right.
All right. Alexander McDonald says, what makes a bad movie enjoyable, e.g., why do we like The Room but hate cats? Now,
I think this is a bad example.
Yeah, I do too. So this is a video essay topic, not a podcast topic. This feels like something you extrapolate in a video essay. But The Room and Cats are part of the same category, Alexander.
100%.
Like,
I think Cats is ironically enjoyable.
Yeah, and as is The Room. What you really need to do is, why do we like The Room but hate Dolittle? Why do we like Cats but hate Dolittle? Dolittle being the worst movie I've seen. So, I don't know. Yeah, like, I think there's those two types of bad. There's bad, boring bad, and there's bad, fun bad.
Well, that's the thing, is that, like, if what makes a bad movie enjoyable, I think, is when there's something to point at that you can make fun of. When a film is just, you don't enjoy any of it, that's bad. But when you hate it, that's good. Because at least you're still feeling something. The movie's still eliciting an emotion out of you. And I think that's the most important thing, and I think that's the distinction.
Yeah. So Dante asked the final question of the episode, which is, what films/era of film do you think COVID-19 situation will spawn, and what impact do you realistically think COVID-19 will have on the film industry?
This is funny, because this was asked like just over a month ago, and it was like, oh shit, these films are getting delayed because of coronavirus. Pff, give me a break. And now it's like, yeah, it is going to fuck over the film industry.
So I think in terms of subject matter of post-COVID-19 films, it'll go from pretty blatant to relatively abstract. I think we'll get films that are literally about pandemics, maybe some that are literally about COVID-19. There's a missing person case happening in New Zealand right now during the nationwide lockdown, and I can't help but feel like that'd be an interesting crime film about like a missing persons case during a pandemic lockdown.
Yeah, well, I wonder if like I feel like I don't necessarily, I'm not able to point out now what it will be, but I feel like there'll be some kind of preying on the fear. So it'll be like horror movies will be about like body snatchers, where they can be anyone, and so you can't trust anyone or anything, rather than like something like zombies that are super visible immediately. And because I think that's the fear that that COVID-19 is is deliberately preying on, is that it's invisible, and we can't and again, you can't trust anyone.
Yeah, and so that's a more abstract example of the kind of fears that'll be played on. And I agree. I think, you'll get things like that. I think we'll also get isolation, abandonment, loneliness movies. I think there are going to be a lot more movies, not just due to COVID-19, but due to the state of the world. A lot more movies that are about like the existential dread as we come to grips with the world dying. First Reformed is a great example of a movie that's about climate change in a very scary and existential way.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of Reddit headlines where it's, oh, this director wrote this film while in isolation. That's going to be a fun movie fact for the next like 3 years. But one thing that's interesting as well that I saw like a tweet about was that it's kind of it feels like it's COVID-19 is going to like reset our like relationship with physicality and intimacy, because 3-4 months ago everyone was eating ass, and now it's like hand holding something you save for like people that you really trust and are really intimate with. And so I wonder how much that'll translate to after the the lockdown and the pandemic is over, that physicality has like a different weight to it now, and like being physical touch has I mean, unless we overcompensate and there'll be like mainstream films about eating ass on the first date.
Yeah, eating ass will become even more taboo than it already is.
No, it'll become less taboo. It'll be like they'll talk about it on the news. The president will talk about it. Although I should warn, COVID-19. I'm not speaking from experience or anything, but COVID-19 can be transmitted through fecal particles. So you could catch COVID-19 from eating the ass of someone.
I can't even eat
infected.
shit anymore without catching COVID-19. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. This is the end. That's all of the suggestions. We will be back to our regularly scheduled programming in the next couple of weeks. So, yeah, thank you for listening. If you want to be part of the Patreon, as we've been getting all these topics from, head over to www.patreon.com/cultpopture and also find us on Facebook and YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all the places. And get involved. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you disagree with us on any of these things. Richard, it's been a pleasure.
AJ, it's been a privilege.
Good night. Bye, everybody.
And good luck. Whew, what a stinker of an episode. Hey, they can't all be winners, can they?
I reckon that was the best episode we've ever done, just quietly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you would say that with what happened. Oh, we don't need to go into it. Anyway, this is the post-credit scene. Thank you for sticking around. Here's where we answer a question sent in by a patron, and so this is a new thing you get if you join our Patreon. I say new, we've been doing this for 10-15 weeks now.
If you donate $5 or more at patreon.com/cultpopture, you get to give us something to talk about or do in this post-credit sequence. I say that because everyone's just asked us a question. You don't have to ask a question. You can say, play this, do that, as long as it,
we can do it in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, a couple of minutes. So today's post-credit scene comes to us from Isaac. And he says, "Hi guys, still loving your work. Been listening since Beethoven. My girlfriend and I followed along with the High School Musical series, Marvel, Bring It On, and Fast and Furious in 2019. That's so cool. We would like to ask...
They're doing James Bond.
Yeah. Potentially. Let us know, Isaac. He says, we would like to ask, what was the film franchise you were expecting to hate but were surprised to like, and why?"
We've been asked similar questions to this, but the one that has the biggest discrepancy between my anticipated enjoyment of it and my actual enjoyment of it would be Scream.
Agreed.
Because that was just going into it like, yep, just another kind of generic horror movie, and then the first Scream is one of my favorite movies of all time now, and that's the only like new favorite movie I've discovered through the podcast. But I mean, there's other ones that even like the ones that I have enjoyed. I've always anticipated like something like Freddy vs. Jason, those horror franchises. Even they have their moments, but I'm always like, it's cool to have all this information.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I don't think the exact situation that Isaac and his girlfriend are describing has happened. Like, even with Scream, I wasn't expecting to hate Scream.
Yeah.
Sure. But I ended up loving it. But I will say that one franchise that always stays in my mind, this was rewatching it for the podcast, was the Austin Powers trilogy. I think I just sort of expected that to be one of the many, couldn't make this anymore kind of sex comedies that we'd covered over and over again. Like, I thought there was going to be some really dodgy, offensive jokes in it that wouldn't fly in today's sort of climate. A lot of punching down jokes or making fun of gay people or women or something like that, which you see abundant in other movies that are about a stone's throw away from what Austin Powers is. But whether or not you think they're good movies or they're funny isn't really what I'm saying. And I do, but that's not really my point. Like, those movies are actually real solid with their morals, I think, which is strange. You wouldn't think they were. And maybe they get away with it because they're parodying something like Roger Moore's James Bond, which is, does all these problematic things without realizing they're problematic. There's a self-awareness and a compassion to Austin Powers that you don't see in other sexy comedies of that era, where like for example, I know we talked about this on the episode, but like in the first one, Elizabeth Hurley gets drunk and tries to sleep with Austin, and he doesn't want to because she's drunk and he's not, and it's like, shit, man, that's pretty cool. They're not really that problematic. They're only, I guess, they're not at all, I would say. The only way they're problematic is if you find sex jokes immature, and that's not problematic.
The only other, there's a few specific films, but the franchise I probably most had this with would be The Evil Dead as well, actually. That because I famously, the remake, I refused to ever watch that in my life, and I quite enjoy. I don't know if I'd watch it again, but it's quite good.